Hello and welcome to day one of our challenge. And this is Samuel. Honestly, I tried as much as possible to bring my face on the camera, but uh, I'm still trying to see. Maybe before the end of this challenge, I would definitely do that. But notwithstanding, I want you to just hear my voice and let's get straight into this so I don't feel shy. Okay, so this is day one of our challenge, and day one is the inner climate. Why classroom community always begins with the teacher. You see, you can't build community externally if it's broken internally. Let me explain this. See, when we talk about classroom community, most conversations rush straight to strategies. We talk about sitting arrangement, we talk about icebreakers, group norms, group class rules, and all of that, classroom management, etc. But you see, classrooms written in bold, marker and pasted on the wall, all of those actually matter, okay? But they are not where community begins. Don't forget, this challenge is about building a strong classroom community. And this day one, community actually begins before the first instruction in the classroom, before the first correction, and before the first smile or frown. It begins inside you as the teacher. I'm going to take that again. Community begins inside you as the teacher. Okay, now this is an invitation to pause and tell yourself the truth and myself the truth. And I want to say this to as many teachers that will listen to this, that uh, they are already giving space to say out loud. You bring yourself into the classroom before you bring your lesson. Your emotional state walks in before your content does. Your stress, your exhaustion, your unresolved frustration, either from yesterday's lesson or arguments from the house or the pressure from administrators. See, none of these wait politely outside the classroom door. They come with you. They come in with you. And children, actually, your student will feel it. Not because they are disrespectful, not because they are difficult, but because they are human and you too, you're human. And this is why two teachers can use the same lesson plan and get completely different results. One room feels tense, hurried and breather, the other feels calm, focused, and alive. The difference is rarely intelligence or experience. It's actually what I call the inner climate. And what is the inner climate? The inner climate is the emotional and psychological weather you create without saying a word. This is how you stand, how you breathe, how quickly you react, how safe it feels to make a mistake, you know, in your own presence. And the truth is this: you cannot build a healthy external community if your internal world is fractured. You cannot consistently model patience while running on emotional fumes. And you cannot demand emotional safety from children while feeling emotionally unsupported yourself. And it's not a failure. It's just the reality of teaching that has been ignored for too long. So, this is day one. I'm not blaming you. It's not about guilt. It's just about awareness. This first day is about awareness because once you understand that community starts internally, something is going to shift in you, and you stop asking what's wrong with these children, and you begin to ask questions like, what atmosphere am I creating right now? And that question alone is powerful. And this is where we community works begin. The unspoken reality, you see, every classroom has an atmosphere. That atmosphere, you can feel it within seconds of walking into the class. You don't need to sit down, you don't need to observe for long, you just feel it. And there are classrooms that feel heavy. Some feel rushed. Some feel tense. Some feel calm. Even when students are active, some feel safe, even when mistakes are made. This atmosphere exists before content, before your rules, before connection, even before the children come into the classroom. And this is the part we rarely say plainly enough. And that atmosphere is not accidental. No, it's not. It is a set. Eh? It's either set consciously or unconsciously. And guess who sets that in the classroom? The adult in the room. And it's not by the curriculum. It's not by the school policy. It's not by the children. By you, the teacher. I'm challenging you on this. See, if we just fix instruction, behavior will follow. But atmosphere, this unspoken reality, does not come from instruction alone. It comes from emotional consistency, from predictability, from the nervous system of the adult loading or leading the space rather. And think about it honestly. You've walked into classroom where nothing dramatic was happening, yet your body felt on edge. And you've been in rooms where learning was noisy, messy, imperfect, but you still feel that, that safe atmosphere. And this atmosphere is not silence, is not control. It is what I call the emotional tone. And your students are constantly scanning. They're scanning. Is this place a safe place and place to ask questions? Is this a safe place to fail? Is this a safe place to be seen? And they scan you the adult for the answer. And this is why two teachers can enforce the same rule, but one escalates chaos while the other settles it. The rule didn't change, rather, the atmosphere did. And it's also why many teachers feel frustrated. They are doing everything right on paper, the planning, the correcting, enforcing, but something still feels odd. The missing layer is often not strategy, but emotional coherence. So, I'm asking you, teachers, to stop underestimating your influence. Telling you now, stop underestimating your influence. You are not just delivering lessons, you are regulating an emotional environment. And once you see that, you begin to understand why community work must start with the adult, must start with you, not the activity, because you cannot pour stability from emotional depletion. You try to build a big community and you plan belonging activities, you encourage cooperation, you speak about respect. The effort is real. I see that. The intention is sincere, but the quiet reason many of these efforts actually collapse is because we ignore our internal state as teacher. You ignore that part. A depleted teacher cannot sustain emotional consistency. An overwhelmed teacher will eventually react. A burnout teacher will default to survival mode. And survival mode is not where community thrives. No, I'm not accusing you. It should be a relief to you. Because what I'm saying names what many of us feel, but we blame ourselves for it. You can love your student and still be emotionally exhausted. You can care deeply and still feel stressed thin. That does not make you unfit. No, it makes you human. But the truth is, we must hold gently. This I'm about to say, you cannot force stability from emotional depletion. You can see it on the slide. You cannot. And your student will feel the shift. When internal reserves are empty, you overreact, you overcorrect, you become inconsistent, you escalate faster than you intend, you say things you later regret. Community cannot be sustained on willpower alone. You require emotional fuel. You require regulation. It requires support. And this is why self-regulation is not self-indulgence. It is professional responsibility. And not so teachers can feel good. Hmm? But your classroom can feel safe. It's not for you to feel good. When we talk about self-regulation, when we talk about your professional responsibility, hmm? It's about your classroom, not just about you. You are not broken, no. I mean, man, I want to just stay on my slide. If not, I will deviate from this. But follow me. God help me to stay on the slide. God help me. God help me. I'm trying. I wrote down these things that I want to say, but I want to follow the things I've written down. I want to follow because this is gonna be a long ride. You're not broken, you're just tired. Mm? And recognizing that is the first step toward building the community we are now. Okay, we're talking about. Okay, let's start getting into the talk of the day. Let's define the inner climate. Okay, students experience this long before their instruction begins. Now, when we say inner climate, we are not talking about personality. We're not talking about being naturally calm or naturally strict. And we are definitely not talking about pretending everything is fine. Inner climate is deeper than that. Now, what is inner climate? This is the emotional and psychological state you bring into the classroom. Whether you intend it or not, it is made up of four quiet forces working together. That's your emotional regulation, your mental clarity, your stress level, and your presence. Let me slow it down a bit. You see, your emotional regulation is your ability to feel without feeling. It does not mean you don't feel frustration or disappointment or fatigue. It means that these emotions do not hijack your responses. Being a regulated teacher, you can feel annoyed and still respond with clarity. Now, let's move on to mental clarity. You see, this is about how scattered or centered you are. When your mind is overloaded, thinking about deadlines, thinking about messages, unfinished tasks, your teaching becomes fragmented. Instructions will blur. Your expectations will start shifting. The student will sense the confusion even when they can't name it. That's your mental clarity. Now, your stress. It's not about whether stress exists, right? It does exist. But teaching is actually stressful on its own. Life is stressful. Your life itself is stressful. So the question is whether stress is managed or unmanaged. Unmanaged stress actually leaks into tone, hmm, body language, and patience. And there's what we call presence. Okay, it's not charisma; it is availability. It's a feeling students get when they realize this adult is actually here with us, not physically present, but mentally elsewhere, not emotionally shut down. Present, present. And your students experience all of this before the lesson starts, before you write on the board, before you call the register, before you give instructions. And this is why classroom issues often begin before teaching even begins. The climate is already set. And this is powerful, not discouraging, because it means that um, you don't always need a new strategy. Sometimes you need a reset, you need a pause, a moment of internal alignment. And the inner climate is not about perfection, it's about awareness. Once you can name what you are carrying, you can manage it. But what is unnamed will always run the room. Do you understand? Right? You feel me? See, listening actually follows emotional perception. One of the biggest misunderstandings in education is the belief that children listen first and feel later. In reality, it is the opposite. Hmm? It is actually not true. Children feel first, they sense first, they read the room before they process the instruction. Now, this is about, let me just explain what I have on the slide. It's about why a teacher can give clear instructions and still feel ignored. It is not always defiance. Often, it is what I call emotional mismatch. Hmm? Children are constantly sensing your tone, your facial expressions, your body language, your consistency, your emotional safety. Now, before they decide whether to cooperate, they actually have decided whether it feels safe to do so. Now, your tone matters more than volume, consistency matters more than charisma, and your safety matters more than authority displays. So, this is why when you shout, you're creating instant silence for not engagement. And silence is not the same as listening. Compliance is not the same as learning. So when students feel emotionally unsafe, their brains shift into protection mode, and in that state, curiosity shuts down. Risk taking disappears, and you're learning to both you and them because the teacher actually still learns when he or she is teaching. It slows. And when students feel safe, emotionally safe, not permissive, they relax. They relaxed, and relaxed brains actually learn faster. Okay, See, listening follows emotional perception, and if perception is threat, that perception is the threat, the response is resistance. But if the perception is safety, the response is cooperation. It's not theory. It's a lived, I'm telling you from a lived classroom reality. And once you as the teacher grab this, the discipline stops being a battle and start becoming communication. You see, the classroom now becomes reactive instead of relational. This I'm about to say is gonna be uncomfortable, but it's actually honest. Okay? When the inner climate is unstable, we've talked about the inner climate, you understand what the inner climate means, right? So when it's unstable, teaching becomes reactive. Not because you as a teacher you're careless, but because regulation has been stretched too thin. And unregulated teaching often begins quietly. A small irritation, a rushed correction, a tone that's sharper than intended. And over time, this turns into overcorrection. Have you overcorrected before? You know what overcorrection means? Addressing every behavior harshly because patience is gone. Overcorrection. Ah. Is it from there? Discipline becomes inconsistent. What was allowed yesterday is punished today, and students stop trusting the system because the system feels unpredictable. If you've seen all my reels, you will notice I keep on talking about a predictable classroom. Classroom management. If you've not gotten my classroom management, please go to my bio now and you get to see where to get the classroom management now in my store. Okay, so then I talked about discipline becomes inconsistent because what was punished what was allowed yesterday is being punished today. So it's not, it become unpredictable. Now, escalation follows. Your voice rises. Power struggles emerge. Authority is challenged. Not because your students want control, but because the environment feels unsafe and unclear. Now, and eventually, authority erodes. Now, this is a painful paradox. The more reactive a teacher becomes, the less authority they actually hold. Relational classroom require emotional steadiness. And when steadiness is gone, relationships strain. The room becomes about managing moment instead of building trust. I'm not here to shame you. I'm here to normalize what happens when you are the teacher, you're supported emotionally. And many of us are not struggling with skill. We have that. We're struggling with capacity. And when capacity is restored, regulation will return. And when this regulation returns, authority stabilizes. And when authority stabilizes, community can finally grow. This is why inner climate work is not optional, it is foundational. Let's move on. Hmm. Take a look at this. Regulation is a leadership skill, and every teacher is a leader. And this emotional regulation is not weakness, it is control strength. This is where many teachers quietly exhale. Because it refrains something you've been misled about for years. Emotional regulation is often misunderstood in education. Some people hear it and think it means being soft. Others think it means suppressing emotions, smiling through frustrations, or letting things slide. That is not regulation. That is emotional neglect. Regulation is controlled strength. A regulated teacher still feels anger, still feels disappointment, still feels tired. The difference is not the absence of emotion, actually. It is who is in charge of it. And leadership in a classroom is not proven by how loud you can get or how quickly you can shut a room down. No, 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 no. Leadership is proven by your ability to stay grounded when the room is not. When students are dysregulated, your regulation becomes the anchor. And this is why regulation is a leadership skill, not a personality trait. A regulated teacher can hold boundaries without anger. They can correct without humiliation, and they can lead without fear. Now, Think about the teachers you respected most, not the ones you feared, but the ones you trusted. Were they explosive? Were they steady? When they spoke, did you listen? Not because they shouted, not because the present carried weight. You see, that weight comes from regulation. And students, your students watch how you respond under pressure. They learn emotional control by watching yours. And when a teacher escalates, students learn escalation. And when a teacher stays steady, students learn steadiness. Okay? So, and here's the part many teachers needs to hear. If you are struggling to regulate, it does not mean you are failing as a teacher or as a leader. It means your leadership load is heavy. Regulation can be trained. You can ask send me a DM. It can be supported and it can be restored. Because leadership does not begin with control over others. It begins with control within you. And your presence as a teacher, because a present teacher reduces noise before speaking. And presence is one of the most underestimated forces in a classroom. Not presence as performance, not presence as charisma, but presence as grounding. And the teacher presence actually means you are mentally anchored. You are not teaching while mentally racing ahead. You are not correcting while still replaying the last disruption. You are not half present. No, 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 not at all. You are not half surviving the day. You are here, here, here. You are here. And students feel presence immediately. They feel it in how you enter the room. They feel it in how you pause for responding. They feel it in whether your attention is divided or focused. And a teacher who is present does not need to rush authority. They do not need to fill silence with noise. Their stillness communicates clarity, and that's why when I gave that rules about noise, I think that's one of the most that's the most viewed. When I say noise, I said noise is not the main thing in a teacher that actually does not understand noise, the failure and all of that. So, I got a whole lot of messages and backlashes and all of that. You can still see it on my timeline, all about noise and see. That's why I'm saying this now. So listen. Oh, where am I? I said I don't want to debate. I said a teacher who is present does not need to rush authority, right? And I also said uh, they do not need to fill silence with noise, and their stillness communicates clarity. Now, this is why a present teacher often reduces noise before speaking. The room settles not because of fear, but because of coherence, and your students subconsciously align with the calm center in the room. I think I have a course on, it's called the calm classroom routines, that you can still check it in my store. Your presence also signals safety. When you as a teacher is emotionally available, your students take more academic risk. They ask questions, they try again after mistakes, and they stay engaged longer. But presence is difficult when you as the teachers you are overloaded. And as a teacher, we are you're physically in the classroom but mentally exhausted. We're teaching while carrying emails, deadlines, parent conversations, administrative pressure, and personal stress. Presence gets fractured. Presence does not require perfection. No, I don't want it to be perfect, but it requires intention. Even brief moments of grounding, like pausing, like breathing, like slowing movement, restore presence. Now I'm telling you what to do when it's overloaded. Take a pause. Take a pause, and that presence restores authority. Because a teacher who is present becomes predictable. And predictability calms students. Calm students cooperate faster so you don't get exhausted mentally. And emotionally, presence is not extra work. It is the work beneath the work. You see, this part is explaining the trap many teachers fall into and why it is so tempting. Reactivity. It feels effective because it works in the moment. A raised voice creates instant silence. A sharp correction stops behavior. And a strong reaction feels like control. When you're tired, when you're overwhelmed, or when you're unsupported, that immediately result feels like relief. But the relief is temporary. And reactivity actually produces short term compliance at the cost of long term trust. And students comply because they are startled, not because they understand. They stop because they are afraid, not because they are aligned. You can check my reels for this day compliance, about compliance in the classroom. And over time, reactivity erodes emotional safety. Students become guarded, they participate less, they test boundaries more aggressively, or they withdraw completely. And see, you can look at this the visual, right? The visual actually matters. Reactivity spikes quickly, then flatlines. Regulation builds slowly but lasts. You see, regulated authority does not silence a room instantly, but it builds cooperation that sustains. And students learn what to expect. They learn the boundaries of stables. They learn that correction does not equal humiliation. Now, this is where you as a teacher feel conflicted. You think, if I don't react strongly, I will lose control. Oh, but calm down. But often, it is the reactivity that slowly leads control away. What you have in front of you does not I'm not shaming reactive moments because every teacher has them. I also as a teacher I have them. Okay? It simply reframes you as signals, not solutions. The reactivity, the moment. What I have here, the slide, you can see the spike right going up and the flat lines. It's a signal. I'm trying to show you signal and not actually solution because when reactivity shows up repeatedly, it is usually a sign of depletion, not incompetence. And that is the deeper message here. Sustainable authority does not come from emotional spike. It comes from emotional steadiness. And when you are the teacher shift from reactivity to regulation, your classroom shifts from fear-based compliance to trust-based cooperation. Yeah, we're getting somewhere. I hope you're learning something. I hope you're learning something. If you feel a bit confused, you can just rewind and take your time to listen. Okay, see, predictability actually builds safety, and safety builds cooperation. While I was preparing my notes, I saw this and I had to think twice. I kept on asking, should I say this? Should I teach this? Will many people understand? Well, I kept on talking about predictability. Predictability. I think I've had some persons ask the question, what do you mean by predictability? A classroom being predicted, or having a predictable classroom and all of that. So I think let me actually explain this. What I have here introduce what I call a form of authority that many teachers were never trained to practice. And most of us teachers, we are taught that authority is asserted, that it is something you apply through your voice, your posture, discipline, or consequence. But actually, calm authority is different. Calm authority is not asserted, it is constructed, and it is built on three pillars: clear expectations, steady tone, and consistent follow through. Let me explain. Clear expectations mean students know what is required of them before correction is needed. Not because it was said once, but because it has been reinforced consistently. And ambiguity creates anxiety, and anxiety creates misbehavior. So clarity removes both of them. And when we move on to safety tone, it's not about something sounding gentle all the time. It's actually about the emotional consistency. When your tone changes wildly depending on your mood or stress level, the students stop trusting the system. And when your tone is steady, even corrections feel safe. Now move on to consistent follow through. Is where authority often collapses, not because you are the teacher, you don't care, but because exhaustion interferes. And when consequences are sometimes enforced and sometimes ignored, the student learn unpredictability, and unpredictability is very stressful. Calm authority. I also have a course on this. I may not explain more about this, but you can check my store to get the calm classroom routine. Okay, calm authority does not actually rely on intimidation, it relies on trust. And students actually trust what is predictable. They relax when they know what will happen next. And this is why calm authority actually reduces behavioral issues over time. And students are not constantly testing boundaries because the boundaries are stable. This is one of the most confronting and freeing ideas in this entire day one. You see, your students, the mirror you, your behavior. Hmm? They mirror that, not consciously, not actually deliberate, like sitting down looking at you to mirror. No, 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 no. But neurologically and emotionally, they mirror. And when you have the teacher is calm, your students tend to settle. And when you are the adult is settled, your students when you're stressed rather, your students actually become restless. Yes, I remember when what I said at the beginning about the inner climate, right? And about the atmosphere. I usually tell teachers around me and I tell them that see, teaching is impactful, is impactation, is an oral. It smells, it stinks. One can actually feel it. That's why I called it atmosphere. Okay, now let me just try to be my. It's an aura. You know, when you use a cologne, a perfume, and you walk and people get to smell your presence, even when you are not there, but the atmosphere still carries your presence. That's what I'm talking about. Your students get to perceive you. When you're unsettled, even internally, it's you don't have to say it. It's we feel it. They feel it. Hmm? They feel it. They feel it. And when you are inconsistent, your student act unpredictably. Okay, I'm not judging you. It's just biology. It is. And children are actually wired to co-regulate. They borrow emotional stability from adults in that present until they can develop their own. And in classrooms, the teacher becomes the emotional reference point. So when your classroom feels chaotic, the question is not immediately what is wrong with this student. No, 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 no. It is often what level of coherence is being modeled here. Do you understand? And you are the adult, your coherence means alignment between words, between tone, between action, and consequences. And when these align, your students feel safe. And when they don't, your students feel confused. Okay, I'm not saying teachers cause every problem. No, 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 no. Calm down. It is what I'm trying to say is teachers influence the emotional pattern of the room more than you as the teacher you realize. You actually influence the emotional pattern in your classroom, and that influence is not a burden, it is power. It is power. Now, when you as the teacher becomes grounded, the room often shifts without new rules, new charge, or new consequences. Students respond to the internal consistency you sense, or they sense rather. Okay, do you understand what the mirror effect means? Let's move on. Taking long on this. Um, it's practical, personal, and necessary. Now, before teaching, before correcting, before reacting, take a pause. Take a pause. Ask yourself, what am I carrying emotionally right now? Am I grounded or am I hurried? Am I responding to today or reacting to yesterday's? You see, these questions are not philosophical, they are preventative. Hmm? Unchecked emotions do not disappear. You are human, okay? Imagine fighting with or having issues with your spouse that morning. Very heated one. uh, that threaten the foundation of your relationship. You understand where I'm driving at, right? Unchecked emotions, they do not disappear. They leak and they show up in tone, patience, body language, decision making. That's why some children are very outspoken about, oh, Miss Susan, zero problem. Even when you feel and you told yourself that you're not showing any emotions, you try. Calm down. It's leaking, but you don't know. And this affects how students experience learning. This part, I'm introducing a habit, not a ritual. A moment of self check that protects you, the teacher, and your students. The goal is not to eliminate emotion. No, no, no. The goal here is to recognize it before it drives behavior. And when you pause, you interrupt emotional spillover. You create space between feeling and action. And in that space, professionalism lives. I'm reminding you here, teachers, that emotional awareness is part of instructional skill, not separate from it. You do not need to be perfectly calm. You need to be conscious. And consciousness changes your classroom very quickly. By this point in this training, I'm sure you're realizing something important, right? Regulation is not a personality trait, it is a skill. It is a skill. And like every skill, it is built through small, repeatable actions, not dramatic overhauls. Okay, this is intentionally practical because when students, when the teacher, when you hear word like emotional regulation, you sometimes imagine something abstract or unrealistic. Long meditation sessions, perfect calm, endless patience. That image alone can feel exhausting. But regulation does not begin with big changes, it begins with small interruption, a pause before correcting, a breath before responding, a lowered voice instead of a raised one, and slowing your movement when tension rises. See, these micro practices work because they interrupt emotional momentum. And most classroom escalations that happen very, 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 very quick. In few seconds, back, everything happens. Not because the issue is actually big, but because reactions compound. Now, a student interrupts, the teacher reacts, the student reacts back, the moment just escalates. Micro regulation breaks that loop. And when a teacher pauses, when you pause, even for 2 seconds, it changes the direction of the interaction. So sometimes I usually tell teacher, when you know something is about to happen, just pause, pause, pause. If you check some of my reels, I keep on talking about pausing, pausing. A child is reacting. Look, pause. Don't say anything. Don't say anything. Huh? Pause. Yeah. You see that the nervous system has time to settle. The response becomes intentional instead of automatic. Lowering your voice is especially powerful. It forces students to lean in instead of push back, and it communicates control without confrontation. Slowing movements, it also matters too. Fast, sharp movements, they signal urgency and threat. Slow, deliberate movement signals safety and confidence. So you see, these practices are not about suppressing emotion; they are about containing it. And the deeper truth in this training, day one, is this: regulation protects teachers as much as students. It reduces emotional exhaustion, it preserves dignity, and it prevents regret. Regulation is not about doing more, it's about doing less, but doing it consciously. Okay? And this you can see the slide here. I'm giving due permission to start small because small changes practiced consistently reshape classroom culture over time. We're almost done. This is quite on purpose. After all the ideas, insight, and reframes, this moment asks you, the teacher, to turn inward, not to judge, but to notice. This task is very simple. Observe yourself today after listening to this. Notice moments you stayed grounded. Notice the moment you reacted. Notice what triggered emotional shift. That's it. Not no fixing, no correcting, no rewriting the day in your head. Just awareness. And why am I bringing this? Is because most of us are highly reflective, but not always in healthy ways. We reflection when I talk about reflection often turns into self criticism. I should have handled that better. Why did I lose my patience? You start judging yourself. What is wrong with me? And this task I'm giving you actually interrupts that pattern. Awareness without judgment builds capacity. Judgment drains it. So when you begin noticing patterns, certain times of the day, certain behaviors, certain pressures, they gain information. You gain actually information, and information is power. Okay, this is about data, not self blame. You see, when did your tone shift? What moment felt draining? What moment felt calm? See, these observations are not weaknesses, they are signals, and signals help teachers begin better support systems for themselves. Okay, so this task for day one also quietly restores agency. Instead of feeling you're feeling controlled by emotions, you begin to understand them. Instead of being surprised by reactions, you start anticipating them, and anticipation leads to regulation. Now, this is how inner climate work becomes sustainable. Okay, not through perfection, but through awareness practice daily. You're not meant to carry this alone. Now, this is the last slide for day one, and it's very instructional. It is relational. This acknowledges this you can see this you can build emotional safety for students give you emotional support, blah 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 blah. You see, this is the truth many of us live with silently. We're expected to create emotional safety for everyone else, for the students, the parents, the school, while often having none for yourself. You're told to regulate, you're told to stay calm, you're told to be patient, you're told to be strong, but rarely are you given that space to process your own emotional load. Now, this is the gap. You cannot build emotional safety, right? For students, if you're emotionally unsupported as a teacher. This is why it's not long term, it's not sustainability. This is why this work does not end with this challenge. I'm inviting you to a community called Beyond Calling, starting this month. Beyond Calling is the space created for teachers by teachers. I'm a teacher, I'm a teacher. See? It's a space where inner struggles are spoken instead of buried, where emotional scars are acknowledged, not ignored, where teaching is seen not just as a profession but as a calling that needs care. Now, this is not about fixing you, the teacher, it is about holding you. Okay, so if today's session stirred something in you, fatigue, recognition, relief, you are not alone, okay? And you do not have to navigate this work in isolation. So this community I'm inviting you into begins internally, and but it is sustained together. So this is an invitation, actually not an obligation, okay? And it's a door. So I'm not demanding you come in, okay? And you can check the bio, or you can actually check the comment section, and you get to see how you can be part of this community. Every month, we get to have a heart to heart discussion. We get to pour out our hearts because we understand each other, we understand one another. So I think we're done with day one. Now, if you actually followed from the beginning to the end, I want you to write the hashtag building a strong classroom community. Follow the hashtag so that when a video like this drops, you get to follow them. It's 15-day challenge. I pray that I actually live up to the 15 days. Did you learn something? If you learned something, please write in the comment section, and don't forget to add the hashtag. Thank you very much. Please invite someone to this challenge. Thank you, and see you in day two.